Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about Thor in Age of Mythology Retold, the god of thunder. He has his own significant benefits, but I would say, to begin with, that he is behind both Odin and Loki. The principal reason behind that is free scouting, that both Odin and Loki do have, well, quote-unquote, free. I mean, for Loki is a god power and it is an upgrade, but you do have significant scouting capabilities that others do lack. And for Odin, you get those 2 free flying scouts, which means like, oh, if your opponent is trying to, gather hunts, gather gold in some safe location, you can spot that and you can raid that and put your opponent under defensive. There's a reason why Odin is doing very, very well in multiplayer. In fact, at the highest level, Odin right now is the best, for a bloody good reason with respect to that. There's other benefits as well, like Njord with Walking Woods, Mountain Giants, and Jotuns. Yeah, that's pretty damn substantial. Like, Njord might need a nerf, because he has a lot of really powerful things all packed up together. Let's see if we can get that. Yeah. Icons still bugged. They were bugged, or portraits still bugged over here in the tech tree. They were bugged in the beta. They're still bugged right here. It is bizarre to see it. Anyway, let's talk about Thor. So his god power in Age 1 is Dwarven Mine. Now, the significant benefit with regards to Dwarven Mine is that it allows you to mine gold very safely. And it also allows you infinite gold, which is a fairly substantial benefit when you're considering a lot of online games. In particular, I would say the biggest benefit of the Dwarven Mine is protection, because you can put your dwarves to gather gold from it right next to a town center, and if your opponent is trying to raid you, well, you can just get them garrisoned in the town center, force your opponent to stop raiding. That is a pretty substantial benefit that shouldn't be ignored. So that works out quite very well for Thor from that particular perspective. In fact, I would dare say that's one of the most substantial defensive benefits in the game, because being able to gather gold safely is a significant benefit that you do have. Then he has Hammer of Thunder, which improves your Herseers, so melee attack and auto-gather rate, work rate for favor for Herseers is doubled. So that means more favor being generated by Thor from them. This is useful, because if your opponent is trying to do a Minotaur rush, Centaur rush, you name it, you have the capability of dealing with that. Herseers are pretty solid as units. More expensive, not great against human soldiers, but there's a lot of things they can deal with. And just having that 15% melee attack benefit, yeah, that is pretty substantial. The lack of scouting is one of the main weaknesses. The gold and the Herseer benefit are significant strengths. Then, on top of that, you start with dwarves instead of gatherers. Dwarves are also cheaper and gather food and with nearly as fast as gatherers. You don't want your dwarves to gather food, because they're not quite great on that. What you want to do with them is gather wood. Initially, though obviously you would want gatherers, really. But you do have cheaper dwarves, so that saves you up on gold. You can then use that gold, trade away for other resources. Don't ignore that particular benefit that you do have over there. So you can get more gold than many other people. It's not the burst of gold that, say, Isis has, but it's more of a constant stream of gold in a way that other gods are lacking in. And yeah, just those cheaper dwarves, pretty substantial. I would start with the initial dwarves on wood. Get enough wood to, chop down an entire tree or 2 trees initially, and then move on to gold with those initial dwarves, and just get a bunch of gatherers to work on food. Now, that would be my perspective. Then Dwarven Armory can be built, and research upgrades in any age. And on top of that, Dwarven Armory will also spawn a free dwarf for each upgrade research. So you don't even need to get any dwarves trained in Age 1, because you can just get the armory upgrades. It won't be as cheap, to be clear, but obviously that will benefit you from a military perspective quite a bit. So basically you can just put your town centers to work constantly on food, on gathering initially, and just rely on the dwarves from the armory for that, or to supplement it. Yeah. You just don't need as many dwarves. The meta is like 6 dwarves in Age 1 before you go to Age 2, one of the meta strategies. Just keep that in mind. then you do get 3 extra Dwarven Armory upgrades. And these are very substantial, because it means in a long game, while these are certainly not cheap, though they're not as expensive as, at least the weapons are not as expensive as iron weapons. While these are not cheap at all, keep in mind you are getting free dwarves for each of these upgrades, and they are giving you that extra benefit. So 4 can have the best human soldiers in the game as a result of that. And I imagine a full boomed 4 in a team game would be quite a nightmare to deal with. There's a reason why he tends to do better at higher elos than lower elos, because people who know how to build up, know how to defend, can really benefit from these buffs that he does provide to the Norse. Now, downsides. You do get Freya in H2. This is substantial because you get healing for that, a cavalry benefit, and you shouldn't ignore the cavalry capability. Even playing as 4, you probably would still want to get cavalry just to raid your opponent. But more importantly, if you're dealing with myth units, it also increases the HP of your heroes by 15%. Couple that with the melee attack benefit, yeah, Perseers are really strong with Freya and 4 together. Forseti, not necessarily as strong, though he does give you a herdman benefit to reducing their hack attack vulnerability and berserker benefit. This is useful because herdmen have a significant attack benefit against, or do pretty well against cavalry, but they are obviously not great against anything else. Also, trolls, while they are a slow unit, the amount of damage these guys can do is fairly substantial, and you can also have passive healing through the healing spring. Not something to be denied. The downside is you're missing Heimdall. So you're missing the Anhari with their significant speed benefit and attack benefit. You're missing Undermine to deal with enemy defenses. So you're missing that for the sake of Forseti. That is the downside. In H3, we get Skadi and Bragi as opposed to getting Njord. So either, Bragi and Nord, or Skadi and Njord if you're looking at Odin. Now, Skadi is more of a support god. She gives you that farming benefit, all that. But it is just that, that lack of Njord. Njord right now is really, really strong in multiplayer. Maybe his trees should be nerfed to some extent. Like, I'm glad you can control them. They were pretty damn useless before. It's useful. Well, you could always use them on enemy base, right? But you couldn't control them. Now you can, thanks Giant Grand Games, because I'm pretty sure they made that change because of his feedback, or his video that got a lot of views. But yeah, not having Njord does hurt you. And then we go to H4, where you get either Tyr or Baldur. Now, Ragnarok is a really powerful ability, so if you're playing a long game against someone who can use Ragnarok, especially someone who can get more upgrades than other people, because you are incentivized to go for those upgrades as 4, that can be pretty crazy. In fact, they nerfed Ragnarok a bit, not quite as much as it needs to be nerfed from my perspective. But that is a bit of a problem to deal with Ragnarok. And also you get, obviously, Fire Giants, Raiding Cavalry benefits, and then Portable Rams benefits. So Baldur is a good choice of a god. Problem is, and this is an issue he shares with Odin, is Tyr is not great. Like, his god power, compare that to Ragnarok, it doesn't even compare, right? Fenrir, Wolfbrood, again, just compare this to Fire Giants, there's no comparison, or the freaking Nidhogg, right? So that is a downside that you do have. But you do have Baldur, so that is a substantial amount of power you do at least have available to you, and one that shouldn't be underestimated. Because if you can get to H4, like, you could just play the turtle game, and I imagine this can work. You can just play the freaking turtle game as 4. You might be able to get away with it a lot better than other people, and then just pop a Ragnarok and win the game with those units. Though, be careful on that, because there are drawbacks with trying to do that. You need to contest the map. You can't just sit on your ass in your base. That's probably the downside. Like, I think one of the reasons why on lower elos 4 is not doing quite as well, I think a lot of people just don't just try and play him too defensively. You shouldn't play defensively. You get the favor benefit from Heresiers. You sure as heck shouldn't play for defensively. But it's just that edge that you can get with 4 that can win you the game if it drags on to H4. You are lacking, significantly lacking, in H3, however. Don't get me wrong, Bragi is a decent god, but compared to Njord, that's honestly no comparison from my perspective. That's all I had to say. Costin here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. I think the problem with 4, just to conclude with this, I think the problem with 4 is not necessarily so much his weaknesses or his strengths or anything like that. It's rather just how important scouting is, just how important map control is at the moment, just how aggressive the meta is. So that is something that the developers need to deal with. I don't think he's badly designed as a god, like Freyr I think is, in a lot of ways. But Odin's free scouting, Loki's free scouting, Hermes free scouting, Isis scouting benefit, all of those are substantial. Like, it just, like, that, believe it or not, that saves you so much time. Like, because if you have to scout yourself manually, right, as opposed to, oh, the game is just going to give me free scouting, or I put a spy on a villager or something like that, then you're having to focus mental energy on that, as opposed to someone who just gets it, you know, for freaking free. And that is a problem. Costin, signing out.